order, Madam Chair. Call the roll. Here.
Present.
Present. Thank you. We're going to go with public utilities first. Is Director King here?
I don't think we have any.
We got a couple of public utilities and public works. It was two public utilities, public works. I'll go to.
No, that was, yeah, these are just.
Okay.
these could be done.
All right. Let's go to capital projects. Capital projects.
These are fine. These are just.
Okay.
public works.
All right. Thank you. This is ordinance number 1146-2024, as amended by Councilmembers Conwell, Bishop, and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to enter into one or more agreements with the City of East Cleveland, authorizing the City of East Cleveland to construct improvements to Woodlawn Avenue as Phase 1 of the Circle East Transformational Project located in the cities of Cleveland and East Cleveland, and to cause payment of Cleveland's share. Director.
Mr. Chairman, there is an amendment.
Oh, if I could, let me read the amendments. There is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. 1, in Section 2, Line 4, strike woodland and insert wood lawn. 2, in Section 3, Line 5, after if issue for this purpose, insert the amount shall not exceed $375,000. This was dated 11/18/2024 by Patricia McGinty Aston, Assistant Director of Law. Director?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. So this is for a transformational project that's important to the city of East Cleveland. Partnerships include the city of Cleveland with our contribution for the portion of this project that's in our city. And then the county land bank is another proponent and supporter and funder of this project. So it's a little piece of the city of Cleveland that's basically bounded by East Cleveland and the Lakeview Cemetery. It appears to be, city of East Cleveland property, but we do have portions of roadways that are in the city of Cleveland. This is a multi-year project. This is the first phase of the project, and our commitment to the first phase is $375,000. And again, it's just for the portion of roads that are in the city of Cleveland that we're paying for.
Awesome. And this just happens to be in Ward 6. It's not just East Cleveland. It's right at the border of Ward 6, Penrose, Woodlawn, and Brightwood. So is this the street cutting through those streets? Because I know that they originally wanted to have a through street cutting through those to connect all three of those developments, or is it strictly paving or redoing one street?
Currently, it's just for the existing streets.
Okay.
And Rick, I don't know if you've heard of the cut through. I personally haven't heard of creating a new street to break up the blocks.
Okay. That's something you guys might want to check in with, because I know originally they were looking at having a street to break up the blocks.
Okay.
Okay, so mid-block, originally they were trying to have streets to connect all three of those, and we might need to see if that's still on the table.
Okay.
Because I think that makes it more of a neighborhood and really kind of breaks up some of that super block stuff, so
Okay.
be interested to see if they're still dealing with that, okay? All right. Councilman Kevin Bishop, this went through municipal services.
Yes, Mr. President. We vetted it this morning, and we fully recommend it for passage.
Thank you so much. And as the council person of record in that area, I am supportive of this. So seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1146-2024 as amended stands approved. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, and by the way, Larchmere looks a lot better. They crack sealed it. It still doesn't look the most beautiful street in the world, but at least it doesn't look like it used to, so thank you.
I was there the other night too, and I thought it looked a lot.
It looks a lot better than it originally did, so thank you, okay? All right. Next, we will go to Public Utilities and Public Works. And I know that the director is not here, but the councilman of record for that committee has stated that this has gone through two committees. Public Utilities and Municipal Services. So I will move forward with hearing this in absentia of the director. This is by council members Casey, Bishop, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the procurement by one or more requirement contracts for the rental of various types of heavy-duty equipment for the divisions of water, Cleveland Public Power, and water pollution control of the Department of Public Utilities and for the Department of Public Works for a period of 2 years. And I know the Director Kane is not here, but I started to say Director Casey. Mr. Casey, Councilman, do you have any feedback on this?
Mr. President, this was duly vetted in utilities and recommended for passage.
Thank you. Councilman Bishop?
Yes, we reviewed, Mr. President, we reviewed this morning and recommended for passage.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions regarding 586-2024? If not, 586-2024 stands approved. Please sign on. Thank you. We'll go to Public Works. Public Works, and this one is, if Public Works can join us at the table. Assistant Director Laird, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, this is ordinance number 940-2024, as amended by council members Bishop and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to enter into one or more contracts with SkyData, Inc. for professional services necessary to provide software, hardware, training, technical support, and maintenance for the parking access and revenue control systems at Willard Parking Garage and Gateway East Garage for the Division of Parking Facilities, Department of Public Works, for a period of 3 years. And there is an amendment, and it states that there is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. 1, in Section 2, at the end, after RQS 7008, RLA 2024-73, insert the total amount of the contract not to exceed $245,018.67. Any additional dollars that will go to Gateway East Garage will require additional authority from council. This was done dated 11/18/2024. Patricia McGinnity Aston, Assistant Director of Law, made the amendment. And the sum of this commitment is $78,665. That's what we have as dollars required for contract. Is that changed? What is that for? That's what I'm trying to understand. Why is the 245 different than the 75 where it says it's needed?
Okay. So, we'll explain that.
Commissioner Johnson.
Council President Griffin, to the other committee members, the $78,000 is an encumbrance amount just for the balance for this year. It was not intended for the entire term. And based upon the amendment, the new estimated maximum over the 3-year period will be $245,018.67.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Councilman Bishop.
Yes, Mr. President, we heard this morning in municipal services, and we vetted it, and we recommended for passage.
Thank you. Councilman Casey, I know you put forth the amendment this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this was put forth because of the sale of the Gateway East Garage. We wanted to make sure that we're not paying for anything that we don't own any longer through legislation, which is why the Gateway East Garage dollars are only there for a year, and it's capped at 47, whatever.
75.
75, and then the remainder of the dollars will go toward the Willard Garage. We wanted to do this for two things. One, to make sure that we don't pay for something that we don't own, but two, to also hold the possible sale of the garage so that it could happen sooner rather than later, and that we're not obligated to pay for anything above and beyond after this sale.
Okay. Good? Yeah. All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you for that explanation, Councilman. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1122-2024. Where is the amendment on this? I thought we had an amendment. So it wasn't an amendment on this?
Yes. Did you get that back?
Where's the amendment part?
Yes, it did, but I think you read it, but.
I
that's it.
did read it, but I
Yeah.
don't see it in the, attached to the file. Are you sure you have it over there?
No, we don't have.
Huh? So that was 940. Okay, got it. My fault. Got it. So that's, okay. So ordinance number 940-2024, as amended, stands approved. Please sign on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
We'll now move to ordinance number 1122-2024 by council members Bishop and Griffin. By departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the purchase by one or more standard and requirement contracts for the purchase, lease, or lease with options to purchase of various on-road vehicles, apparatus, and off-road equipment, cabs, bodies, and accessories, equipment, and other aftermarket items necessary to equip the vehicles authorized for their intended purposes, including vehicle rehabilitation, training, and inspections as needed for the various divisions of city government. Director, Assistant Director Laird. Let me, there's no amendment to this. Okay, please
So I
move
do
forward.
want to introduce an amendment to this based on the MSP that we had earlier. We have an amendment here, and we did send it over.
Okay. I am not able to proffer an amendment. Is anybody able to do that? Or we need a proffer and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unless the chairman of MSP wants to proffer it, I can do it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose an amendment to ordinance 1122-2024. And that would be in section 3, line 2, after contracts shall insert be paid from fund numbers 20SF723 and 20SF724 and an end amendment.
Okay. Second.
Mr. Chairman, I second it.
All right, so the amendment has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The ordinance 1122-2024 as amended stands approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finance, if finance couldn't come up. This is ordinance number 1201-2024 by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to pay as a moral claims the sums opposite the names of the claimants. Welcome to the table. We have a new Finance Director. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Paul Barrett, Director of Finance.
All right.
So this item is a moral claim that went to the Moral Claims Commission. It was an instance where a citizen's mother's tombstone was damaged by some grass mowing. We recommend the award of $500. The citizen ended up paying for the repairs themselves. The $500 is an amount that would have been deposit or deductible on the insurance.
Okay. All right. And I know that I sit on that committee along with Mr. Romero. Did you have any guidance that you wanted to give to anyone regarding that?
Sir, it was pretty cut and dry, Council President.
Absolutely. And once again, there is a morals claim committee. There's approximately 7 of us that sit on that committee. In addition, is Councilman Jones, Director Griffin, Mr. Romero, and about 3 attorneys.
Law Director, and then the others are ad hoc members of the committee.
Okay. So this was not something that came about easy. We always question these, so just so that everybody's aware of that, okay? Any questions regarding ordinance number 1201-2024? Councilman Casey.
Mr. President, to the director, was the individual was the I don't want to say her name, but it was are they out of pocket anything, or is this, did the insurance pick up everything else?
My understanding was that there was no insurance. They didn't make a claim. They paid out of pocket.
And they paid this amount out of pocket, this is what it cost. I just want to make sure that because of our negligence, they're not out of pocket anything.
No.
Romero?
Mr. Romero.
To the Council President, to Councilman KZ, so this would have been the amount that her homeowner's deductible would have been. She was unable to provide us with the documentation from the insurance company, but it was in excess of $500. But we paid out what the deductible would have been on our homeowner's policy. And that's how we arrived at the figure.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding
Chair.
ordinance number 12?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Anthony Harrison.
So Councilman Casey asked a question that was one of my thoughts. Regardless of, and I think that's where we need to make some adjustments here in the city of Cleveland. We get into this whole, well, file with your insurance company first. Well, we all knows what happens when you file things with your insurance company. Your insurance go up, they may drop you. There's a lot of things that happens when you go out and file these claims for issues, in particular that maybe, you know, was a cause of our negligence, right? Or whether a failure of our systems or apparatuses, whatever the case. But, you know, I'm concerned, and I think we need to really review that and see whether that is the right way to continue to operate here in the city of Cleveland. You know, we put a lot of undue burdens on residents when we send them down these roads. Like, I still have residents on Haldane who still hasn't been paid. You know, who still can't get a true response after WPC indicated that it was a system failure on our end that caused these basements to back up. But nonetheless, what was the actual out-of-pocket expense for this particular resident?
To the Council President, Councilman
Okay,
Harrison.
your mic is off. Green, there you go.
To Council President, to Council Harrison.
Thank
We asked her to turn her bills in, and we requested them multiple times, and she didn't provide them. We know that we saw the damages that we
we know
caused.
exist, okay.
So we knew it was at minimum above $500. Therefore, we knew that the homeowner's policy, if she had stated that her homeowner's policy had a $500 deductible, that's how we arrived at the figure. But we gave her plenty of opportunities to please turn in the invoices, but that was never accomplished.
Okay, well, that's good. That makes a difference. So that's it. In that situation, as you just narrated, it makes sense, right? But we know of others prior and ones that we expect to come forward that, you know, that may not be the case. And we immediately tell folks, well, file an insurance claim. Well, hold on. You know, what if a person don't want to file an insurance claim? Like, that should not be, you know, absolute requirement for those, because a person may rather pay it out of their pocket $2,000, $1,000 to fix something on their vehicle, right, or their house, without paying the lesser that may be the insurance deductible, because going the lesser route could have long-term effects, right, on them in terms of their rates, being able to keep that insurance company. So I think that we need to review our practice here within the city, and whether it is the way we've been doing it is still the right way to do it. So, and I'm interested to see what other cities do as well, here locally and outside of Cleveland. And I know that you are always on top of your business, Mr. Romero, but I think that we should take some time at some point, not immediately, but at some point, to review our practices. Thank you.
In direct response to Councilman Harrison,
Sure.
we'll definitely take that under advisement.
All right. Good points, Councilman, and I know that these are always tough. I will tell you, one of the challenges that we have on the committee is lack of documentation and paperwork. And that's the biggest issue that we run into. I think you bring up some valid points, and might be good for you to spend some time with Mr. Romero, who I know knows this in and out, if we could, okay? Bring up some good points. Thank you. Councilman Kerry McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that, and welcome, Director. I guess I'm going to be on the other side of the coin. Why are we paying out money where there's been no documentation of expense? Through the chair.
Through the chair to Councilman McCormick, because we saw the damages that we did.
Right.
And we knew that it was in excess of this amount.
But was there evidence that the individual repaired it?
Yes.
Okay. So, and again, this is not specific to this case, but I'm just kind of thinking in the bigger terms of things with this committee. So we saw the damage, individual repaired it, but had no evidence of the expense to repair it. Okay. Okay. I know on our side of council, if we don't turn in which is the way it should be, every last receipt with every single item, we do not get reimbursed, which is, again, the way it should be. So I'm just interested in if there's zero documentation of this individual performing the repairs. And again, I'm not picking on whoever this person is. I'm saying as a holistic matter for this committee, it's curious.
Through the chair to Councilman, I assure you this committee is extremely judicious in its expenditures. All the other claims that were proffered at the last meeting of October 30th were all denied. And there were some substantive amounts included in that. And I know, sitting on this committee for 15 years, that I squeak when I walk.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And again, to Councilman Harrison's point, if we messed up and there's documentation of that, absolutely, we should take accountability for that. But it's just curious to me that, you understand what I'm saying? Is it paying someone out that there's no documentation that a volunteer from the cemetery could have fixed it? We don't know.
Through the chair to the Councilman, I'm not sure that volunteer could have fixed Mark. And I believe the cemetery I looked into what it would cost to repair that.
Okay.
So
All right.
she didn't come up with documentation, but we knew it was going to be in excess.
Okay. Again, I'm fine with this. I'm just curious on the process, and if there is no documentation, how do we work on that? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions regarding ordinance number 1201-2024? Hearing none, ordinance number 1201-2024 stands approved. Please sign on. Thank you and welcome, Director.
Thank you.
I already warned him about all of us, y'all, so just. Thank you. All right, we're going to bring up Human Resources, and I'm going to ask Director Cole and Ms. Long to come to the table. And as they're coming up, I just want to make sure I reiterate, we held this piece the last time because we needed more clarification. They did send some more information. I know that some of us have some more questions, and just want to make sure that we have a good understanding of why this is being done.
Sure.
And I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this list of people, and I want to say I do have some concerns because here are people that's been performing at a high level for a long time, and I'm not going to point out just key people, and I want to make sure that we're not inadvertently demoting, moving them around, or gutting the departments because of this alignment. So just want to make sure that you guys understand where I'm at, because if we don't think that the conversation is going in the right direction, then we will continue to work on this until we get it right. Okay? So please proceed, Director. This is ordinance number 1217-2024 by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend sections 5, 8, 25, 30, 34, 36, and 40, and 42 of ordinance number 194-2021 passed March 29th, 2021, as amended, relating to salaries for various classifications. Director, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. I think it might be best just to hit that piece first, if that's okay.
Please.
If you can refer to the October 24 memo that was sent by Director Long, the two main changes as it relates to the deputy commissioner position title and the assistant commissioner title is as a result of an ongoing project to clean up the duty statement for civil service, which is originally about 825 or so positions. With these additional changes incorporated would bring it down to around 700 or so. We've been trying to work through it. Well, Director Long has been working through it. Specifically, as it relates to these two positions, we currently have 11 titles for deputy commissioner in the civil service duty statement. And of those 11 titles being used, there's 5 people of the 11 titles.
Please clarify that 5 people of the 11 titles that are still hired or
Correct. So
still impacted by this.
So they're not actually impacted in terms of their employment, their pay, their organizational place and structure, anything like that. This is nothing more than a title change to incorporate all the titles in the pay band to reflect the 2 titles, one being deputy commissioner and one being assistant commissioner. And essentially what it's doing is, which is truly best practice, is having one title that can be used across the whole organization. And that is of either deputy commissioner or assistant commissioner. And what it essentially does, if you look at the pay band legislation itself, is it strikes out the individual titles, but then adds one deputy commissioner title and one assistant commissioner title, in which the people that are currently employed would use. They would fall under one of those 2, and then anybody else that any of the departments wanted to hire in either assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner title would also use one of those 2 titles. It in no way, shape, or form changes the structure of the organization or the departments. It does not affect the employees individually. It does not change their rates of pay. The title that was, for each of them that was created, incorporates all of the duties, minimum qualifications, and then salaries of all of the existing assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner position titles. But to the contrary of the concern that I think we discussed last time, it actually expands the opportunity for the city to use these titles because they're not pigeonholed into individual titles. So, for instance, there's currently 11 specific deputy commissioner titles. Using the title of just deputy commissioner could be then used for pretty much anything that any of the departments wants to create for a deputy commissioner position. So it actually expands the flexibility for a department. I'm not aware of any plans to change or reduce the staffing in either of these positions overall, the titles overall. Again, this is part of a bigger project in which we're going through the duty statement and trying to make it also practical. There's many of these individual titles that aren't used. Out of the deputy commissioner, 6 of the 11 aren't used currently, and then out of the assistant commissioner, there are 6 of 10 not used. So I'm hoping to address the concerns as it relates to some type of substantive change which is going to impact employees. It is not. It's just a consolidation of titles.
Well, if Ms. Long want to give any background.
Through the chair to council members, this is an ongoing project through civil service. We are going through the duty statement, trying to update classifications. We are actually meeting with each department. So far, we've met with about 5 departments to review their classifications and their needs. And also, as Director Cole said, we are trying to clean up the pay band ordinance and streamline. So as it relates to the deputy commissioner, we currently have 6 employees in specified deputy commissioner classifications, and so the 6 individuals will simply be reclassified to deputy commissioner. There is no impact to their seniority, their rate of pay. We're not restructuring. We're not doing any of that. And there are 6 deputy commissioner classifications that are actually just dead classifications. There are no one in those titles, so we're just simply removing them. And then as it relates to the assistant commissioner, there are 5 individuals in specific assistant commissioner classifications, and the same for them. They will just be reclassified to assistant commissioner. No impact to salary, department, any of that. There are currently 10 assistant commissioner classifications. 6 of those are dead classifications. There are no one in those classifications.
All right. Just a few questions, and anybody else who else want to be on this? I know Councilman Casey. Anybody else want to be on the list for questions? A couple of things. And I want to be very judicious in how I approach and say this. First of all, thanks for giving us this executive summary. Some of us that have long history in the city hall remember when we had general categories for project coordinator and project director. And the Civil Service Commission sued us, or the Civil Service Agency sued the city because the positions and the civil service classifications were too broad. Are we setting ourselves up for the same thing by having too broad of a position for these deputy commissioners and assistant commissioners because we're not being specified of what we're asking them to do?
Through the chair to council members, although we are changing the titles to deputy commissioner as a general classification, the minimum requirements will still stand for each department. So if there's a specific requirement, say for, if you have your handout, that's listed on the 3rd page, the specific minimum requirements for the deputy commissioners, if there are specific requirements. So that will not impact.
See, the challenge when you look at things like this, just in my lens, is that it looks eerily similar to the vacancy pool. That basically you can take these titles of assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner and apply them to wherever we want to. So wherever you want to. So how are we making sure that we are not gutting commissioners in IT or recreation or water, and somebody decides they want to put them all in another department? How do we get that guarantee? I know you guys have management experience and could do whatever you want to, but part of the reason that these commissioners have been embedded is because they bring a level of expertise and stability to those departments. And what's confusing about this is when we started off in this direction where you guys gave the actual titles versus working titles. And that's confusing to people, and it seems like it leaves a lot of room for people doing whatever they want to do, that there's not guardrails. So that's a concern. I would love to see if you guys have an address for that. Last but not least is this union. Are these union positions or are these non-union positions?
To the chair,
And I asked several questions for the sake of time.
Sure, of course. So, to the chair, your second question, they are not union positions. They're non-bargaining civil service positions. To the first question, I completely understand what you're saying. The organizational structures of the departments, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. They're necessary positions. There are limited civil service positions in some cases that have different working titles. That is many, many decades in formulation, because the general position of a position, a project coordinator, administrative manager, pretty much many of the civil service titles you can pick have been developed over time to serve the purpose of the particular department in which they fall under, and then what the specific duties of that position do. In terms of comparison between civil service and working title, I think you would probably find a pretty expansive list through the city in terms of those differences. But I do think it also offers, again, a high level of flexibility to those departments to be able to have somewhat of a similar level, like let's say a project coordinator level or administrative manager level, is probably the best example across the city in which you could have people doing different things, but still at the same level of that department. For instance, I'll use the HR department as an example. I have different administrative managers, but they oversee different clusters. So their title, civil service title, is just administrative manager. But if you look at their working title, there's a manager of benefits, there's a manager of talent acquisition, there's a manager of talent management, there's one of employment and labor. I have multiple cluster areas, but they all have the same civil service title, which is administrative manager. That's essentially what this is doing. It's creating one civil service title in which could be used for that level of within the organization that can actually be very flexible depending upon what the department wants to do. So I mean, it's very, I'd say, grounded and developed over the course of time. It's really no different than we're already treating other levels that have developed over, really many decades here. I hope that gives some additional explanation.
Why was this needed, and how is this helping service delivery? What is the major need for this? Is it a legal need for this? I know you're saying cleaning this up. Why? Why is this cleaning this up? How is this helping with service delivery, streamlining services? Why is this needed?
To the chair, I'll answer part, and Director Long can fill in as well. So back to the fact that we have, currently still nearly 800. Now I think it's about 750 civil service classifications. And many of those classifications are just not used. What we're trying to do is really kind of look at things very objectively, as Director Long had mentioned earlier, in conjunction with the departments to try to come up with and carry forth the most efficient, streamlined, and logical approach to our business, which is government. And having 700-800 classifications is just unneeded. They essentially, over time, there was just lots and lots and lots of classifications created, but nothing ever done with them. They just were created. There was never actually any review to see, hey, what's still used? Hey, what do we need these for? We're really making strides, or trying to make strides, in multiple areas in our departments to get the city into 2024, and I think this is one of them.
So when you flatten these out, it also moves the pay grade up to 170 max, right?
The pay band, yes,
Pay
yes,
band.
Chairman.
So if it moves up to 170 max, many of these commissioners can technically get a significant raise if we make this flatten out all of these deputy commissioners and assistant commissioners.
To the chairman, that would still have to be budgeted. So this is just the legislative band, but it would still have to be something that is approved through their budget. So this doesn't actually touch their budget. This is just the legislation to create the band.
Well, I mean, the reason I'm questioning this, and I'm not going to, I'll say the department. It is what it is. So CD asked us to do this, and now they come back to us and say, we want to change who the housing officer is for the state, because now the commissioner who they had as the housing officer was now some kind of other title. So they actually use this as a way that they actually realign their department, and that wasn't the intent of us passing that legislation. And some of the historical knowledge and some of the stabilities of those departments have suffered because of everybody really trying to realign their departments. And if that is the move, then somebody just needs to say that, because that's the way that we're taking this. Then next thing we know, we're going to get some good people, because I know some of these folks and work closely with them over the years, that all of a sudden now have a major title change, and then we start getting nightmare calls saying how such and such that used to work in engineering has been pulled to go do other assignments, and then we're upset about the service delivery of a department. Can that happen under this process? That's what we're concerned about. If you could actually, if you flatten out these project coordinators, you can take somebody out of one department, put them in another, and raise their salary technically without council's input, approval, or anything else. That's what everybody's concerned about. You can actually use this to destabilize a department.
To the chair, I don't think that could happen like that for really a couple main reasons that come to mind.
Sure, please share.
One is the civil service rules themselves, which when you start talking about taking an employee and moving them to another department, there's certain stipulations within civil service rules that have to occur to even permit that to happen. That's probably the main one that hits me first and foremost. The second part is, I know some of these departments are legislated. Their structures are legislated. When you start talking about like the Department or Division of Information Technology, for instance, their department structure is actually codified. So I mean, I'm not seeing a logical way that that could just happen where they pull somebody and drop them into another department. What it does do without having to be, in some cases legislated though, is let a department create a position, and then fill it and then establish a working title, which is what we have all through the city now.
So just want to say this, because civil service was put in place to protect and put guardrails to prevent nepotism, cronyism, and all of the stuff that came with the whole Tammany Hall movement. So I'm very, very intentional about how we look at civil service laws, because if we remove some of those barriers and some of those things, then we're allowing workers who have committed their life to the city of Cleveland to potentially be vulnerable. I need assurances that that's not going to happen, because if we start getting calls that's what actually happened at the table, Director, I'm going to be like the Tasmanian devil, because that is not good to treat workers who have been here for 20 years or so, and then all of a sudden they get a title, and then you got people jumping over them, or you're moving people around because the guardrails are taken off, and that's not fair to these workers. So that's what I want to make sure does not happen. How are we going to make sure that doesn't happen? That's what I want to make sure, and that's what I need to understand. Where and how do we know that that's not going to happen?
To the chairman, I can tell you, in terms of civil service and human resources, that's never even been something discussed. That's never been something that's come into the equation. As a matter of fact, we're actually working to continue to try to remove barriers to get people hired. But in terms of guardrails, we're not looking to get rid of any guardrails.
Okay.
I mean, the structure and the intent of civil service is there for a reason. We're not looking to alter that by any means.
Okay. Ms. Long, do we still have a civil service? It's not a union, but there's a civil service organization. Have they looked at this, or have they registered on this, and have your 5 commissioners that we assigned to the civil service commissioners approved this and support this?
Through the chair to council members, yes, all of these changes have been approved through the Civil Service Commission, and the Civil Service Association, yes, it still exists. But that is not who we would have these changes approved through. They were
No, well, it's a
through the
management issue. I'm just wondering, are they aware of this? Because what I don't want to happen is we mess around and pass something and they don't weigh in, and then all of a sudden we end up back in court with that same, you remember the whole project coordinator versus project director, and people were having TA, temporary appointments, where they would put somebody in under the category of project coordinator in any department, and then they would actually erode union jobs, because you would have people that literally could have an imaginary project coordinator or project director position, and then it would take away from a union position because they'll actually be doing and eroding union work. So I know that these are like details that are boring, that the public doesn't really do a deep dive in, but we do need to make sure that we're very cognizant that our workers are not just going to be tremendously impacted by a major shift like this. And I don't even want to call it a major shift, but this right size and alignment, sometimes we could be in a rush to do things and not be intentional on making sure that we are looking after our workforce. So do we have any guarantees, or how can somebody help us understand that? It might be good if somebody legally came up here to back you guys, but if you guys could defend it yourself, that'd be great. I'm going to save any questions that I have for Councilman Casey or anybody else on the committee. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Ms. Long. Councilman Casey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First thing we need to clarify is in the legislation itself here, it looks like we're doing more than just this deputy commissioner. For example, in section 30, we're eliminating the private secretary to the director. In section 40, it looks like we're eliminating the assistant director of HR and economic development. In section 38, looks like we're eliminating a human resource admin. So this is just more than just clarifying or reclassifying deputy commissioners. When you look into the legislation, we're also, and I'll be honest with you, Mr. Chairman, this is just me scrolling right here. You know, now I just happen to find those 3 jobs. So what else aside from deputy commissioner or commissioner are we eliminating in this ordinance?
Director, Ms. Long.
So, through the chair to the councilman, earlier I was just saying that was the first part that I thought we would discuss. I am aware there's other pieces that I'm happy to go over that are part of this legislation. And it might be best if you're amenable, we can just go section by section.
Mr. Chairman, I think there's way too much in this piece of legislation to do this at the table today. I think you should trust your own gut on this one, even the questions that you've been asking. I would love to sit down with the 2 directors.
Director, can we do this? 'Cause I apologize. He's right. It's complicated. Can you make an arrangement for council members to come and talk to you? Because what's very frustrating is that people want us to try to unravel these complicated pieces at the table. And I know that we're bound by all the rules that we're supposed to have these debates in public. But sometimes it takes a little bit more time for any council member that needs to sit down and really understand this, or you're going to continue to have this. That's why I really need some hand-holding on this, because if not, we're going to continue to have this line of questioning. I actually understand it better. I tried to flush out some of the concerns that council has, but clearly you're going to have members across this table that are still going to be perplexed. Is it possible that these members can make an appointment to sit down with you so that we could finally put this on the agenda next Monday and get it across? Because clearly people need some very, very intentional time to sit down and go over this with you, because it will probably not pass if I just tried to push it through today. Just to let you know. I understand it better. I spent some time trying to understand it last time when you guys sent it last week, and I went back and read through it. I did not anticipate that we were going to come right back today. I thought we would have a little bit more time, but I missed that because I was out of town last week. So I want to give the councilmen some time to digest this, and also if they need to have office hours to come and see you to better understand this legislation, so that we're not having this at the table and people actually have a clearer understanding. Can we do that? So then that way it makes it a lot easier and people can feel a lot more comfortable.
To the chairman and the councilman, I am always open to discuss not only
I'll make sure we,
legislation.
at least for me, I'll
I
see
think
you
it's
guys
other
this
council
week.
members that are texting me as we speak to say they need to understand and they have a lot more questions. But sometimes, you know, people need to understand it better so that they can articulate their questions better at the table.
Sure.
So let's take our time with this, because I don't want to just table it, because if I table it, we'll kill it. I just think it's best that the council members that need to talk to you, now this is for any council member, and Inez and Ms. Magistro, we're going to put this out there. They need to take the opportunity to come and see you and Ms. Long this week, and then by next week, we're moving this forward.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that people get a chance to understand that, okay?
Sure.
Councilman McCormick.
No, thank you, Chair. I support that. And I know Councilman Casey's on top of this. I would just note that, as you said, I support a defined time, because sometimes we ask to do something and ain't nobody call.
Right.
So if you want to talk to them,
Next
you got a week.
That's
And I will give you
My
my
concern.
commitment, and Inez, 1217, we are hearing this again next week, but I want to give any council member who wants to sit down and talk with Director Cole and Ms. Long to go over this. Human services and civil services are very complicated. I want the listening public to understand that. Only reason I know about it because I actually had to go through a civil service process myself, so I understand what you're trying to do. I just don't want to have any inadvertent potential impacts. What will be helpful as well is if the legal people can make sure that they give you a background opinion that we won't end up in court with the civil service coalition or whatever they're called because of these universal titles, and then we'll end up back in court because they're saying they're not specific enough. So want to make sure that we're just a little bit more measured on this. This is very difficult stuff. I know you guys got a tough job doing this, but I am going to try to open up for any council members that can take the time to come and meet with you, and we'll put it back on the agenda next Monday, okay? Is that fair enough? So then
Yes.
that way we won't delay you anymore. Many of us were out of town last week, so we didn't get a chance to engage you last week, okay?
okay.
All right,
Sounds
thank you.
good.
That's good? Okay. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1217-2024 will be held until next week at the council meeting. I want to be very, very specific that next Monday, council meeting, we will be hearing this. And if you have any questions, please reach out and have a conversation with the director and Ms. Long, Director Long, okay? Councilman Casey, anything else you want to add to the conversation? And Councilman Casey's pretty good at understanding this process, so if anybody wants to hear some of his concerns, I would advise you to have a conversation with him because he's been really the guy watching a lot of this whole ordinance, okay? Okay, looking forward to that, if we
Great.
could, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right, so we're going to hold 1217-2024, and that is all the legislation we have. Therefore, this Committee of Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is adjourned. Please excuse the absence of Michael Polensik, Councilman Polensik. Councilman Polensik has an excused absence, okay? This committee is adjourned.